What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Jackal Gold Games. And in this video, I'm going to be doing a review for Silent Hill 2, which is this one right here as a part of the Silent Hill HD collection for the Xbox 360. Once again, thanks to Larry the Batman fan, he's the reason I have this, and I'm able to play some of the Silent Hill series. So go subscribe to his YouTube channel, link in the description. I know this isn't really a impressive, well-made HD collection because of things they've done, but when it comes to playing some of the older Silent Hill games, it's one of the more affordable ways to do it, and the games are still playable. So, I did a first impressions video for Silent Hill 2. It was my first one to play. Since then, I've played and beaten every single one. Now I'm going back through and completing them. And I've completed Silent Hill 2 and done everything in it. I got all the achievements for it, the 10-star run, I got all the endings. So I did everything in the game. Now I'm going to do a review for Silent Hill 2 and tell you what I think of it. I really enjoyed Silent Hill 2. I thought it was a really good survival horror game. It's definitely one of the best out there, one of the best titles from the sixth generation. I definitely put it up there, Resident Evil 4. Out of the Silent Hill games I've played, I would say it definitely is my favorite one so far. It's a great game. When it comes to all the aspects of it, I'm going to talk about it. So, first, we'll talk about the gameplay. The gameplay of Silent Hill 2 is basically like a mix of fixed camera angles, a little bit over the shoulder, kind of, because you can control the camera and you can see behind your character. You have melee weapon combat, you have gun combat, you can use a pipe, you can use a wooden plank. There's puzzles in the game you can do, which can be very challenging. It's referred to as riddles to the riddle difficulty. So, puzzles within the riddle difficulty. You have easy, normal, hard, then you have extra riddle difficulty. You also have beginner difficulty as well for playing the game and the gameplay. The gameplay itself I thought was very fun. I enjoyed the melee combats. I enjoyed the gun combat, the pistol, the shotgun, the rifle. Those guns are very fun to use. You also have some cool unlockable stuff after you beat the game, some cool New Game Plus weapons, like you get a chainsaw, which is very fun to use. You can get some green hyper spray if you do the 10-star and it instantly kills enemies. You also have a regular hyper spray, which I don't really know what the effect is of it. All I read online is that it blinds the enemies or something like that. And yeah, the gameplay is very fun. I like the enemies you fight in the game. The straitjacket enemies are pretty cool. They have like their arms folded. They're one of the first common enemies you face. I also like the bugs you face. They're called creepers. You have the mannequin enemies you face as well. Pyramid Head a few times as a boss battle. Some other boss fights in the game as well. Gameplay wise, I thought Silent Hill 2 was solid and I did have fun with it. I enjoyed the mixture of melee combat and gun combat. It's a nice mixture. The game gives you a ton of ammo, so you can go guns blazing pretty much in the game. It is, out of all the Silent Hill games, in my opinion, excluding playing on hard mode and going for 10-star run, it is a pretty easy game. Out of all the Silent Hill games I played, because they give you a ton of supplies, ton of healing items, ton of ammunition. You also have healing items in the game you can heal yourself with, like med kits and these little health drinks, and then you have the ampule, which makes it to where you fully heal, but it also like makes you run faster. And yeah, so I enjoy the gameplay in the game. It's really good. There's exploring you can do. Sometimes you can go off the beaten path of the main story and explore some areas, and that's pretty fun to do as well. So yeah, I like the gameplay of Silent Hill 2. Good survival horror gameplay, and I enjoy it. And there's a good mixture of puzzles in there, and yeah, gameplay is really solid. When it comes to the story of Silent Hill 2, I think the story is really good. I like the story as well. It's one of the strongest things about Silent Hill 2 is it has a really good story. The plot twist, which I don't want to spoil it for those that haven't played the game, but if you don't care about spoilers, you can go ahead and keep watching. So the big plot twist in the story is you find out that the whole time James Sunderland's wife was dead because he murdered her. Basically, the concept of Silent Hill 2 is you go into town and James is trying to find his wife. He got a letter from her 3 years ago or 3 years later, and he's trying to find what happened to her. Along the way, he meets other characters such as Angela, Eddie, Maria, who is a variation he sees in his vision of Mary and who she used to be. And then you have another character named Laura as well, and you're trying to find out what happened to her, your wife, but also learning about some of the other characters. Eddie is a guy that is pushed around a lot and eventually ends up losing it and shooting people for it. Angela has a past of being abused by her dad. Laura is like the lone little girl that has some history with Mary. And then Maria, from playing her campaign as well, which I'll talk about too, she seems like a lonely person that worked as a stripper, but then it's also a figment of James' imagination because the area she's in and how she's dressed. I mean, I'm assuming that's what she was or that's where she came from. I'm gonna assume that. I could be wrong though. And then I know this game, like with its enemies and creatures, they kind of are a manifestation of certain things. The series has a lot more of a cryptic feel to it in terms of like things in the story and enemies and stuff like that. And there were some things I didn't pick up on until after I had played it again. Like one of the things I thought was interesting I picked up on is reading that letter that Mary had sent to Laura saying, "Hey, James sometimes can be this way." I think it said Shirley or something, and I looked it up and it said and it mean like irritable. So I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." James always had kind of an irritable side to him then. And I thought the story in this game was interesting. You know, trying to figure out what happened to your wife, the characters you met in the story, I thought they were very interesting as well. Certain enemies of manifestations like the pyramid head stuff was cool. The last few bosses you fight are pretty cool. I enjoy the story of the game, and I think the plot twist was well done because I did not see it coming. I was like, holy shit, he killed his wife. That's insane. That's crazy, you know, and it made him a very interesting character. Made the game very different from a lot of other games, story wise and character wise, because the main character is kind of a villain since he killed his wife. And essentially, his wife, to also talk about this as well, basically, what you find out is that Mary had this disease, and the doctor didn't know how much longer she had. He didn't know if she was going to be around for a few more years or a few more months. And as she was going through this, she was going through a lot of emotions of what it was doing to her and her brain. And there were times where she would attack James and put him down, but then want him to be there, and that would affect James certainly in a lot of ways. It would affect his mental health, and he wanted his life back, and it just ruined a lot of things for him. And there were times where his wife wanted to be killed and taken out because of the disease and what it was doing to her. Then, you know, you find out in some of the like letters and certain endings in the game that she was attacking James and being that way because she just didn't want to accept that she was dying from this disease. Because James and Mary were a couple and they got along until this disease came along. And you find out the twist that James Sunderland actually killed her, and apparently she was in the trunk of the vehicle you came in with, which is pretty dark. And yeah, you come to find out that he killed his wife because of what was going on, and he wanted his life back, but he also felt guilt for it. And Pyramid Head is like a representation of that guilt. And one of the things I think is interesting about Silent Hill 2 is out of all the games in the series, besides maybe Downpour, it deals more with like what the characters are like and kind of manifestations of things they've done and you know what's going on with them. It was like basically more of like a personal individual story, whereas like the other ones are more about like the cult and the order and stuff like that, even though sometimes in those games they still kind of have somewhat individual stuff, but this game really has the individual story thing the most with like each person. There's also endings in the game, which I got all the endings. They were very interesting. There's the rebirth ending in the game where you can collect all these items and you can bring Mary back from the dead, which is pretty cool. There's the in water ending, which was my first ending, which James ends up killing himself and drowning himself in the water. That was definitely dark. There's a leave ending where James forgives himself and he leaves with Laura. That's a pretty cool ending. That's one of my favorite ones. I think that one kind of makes sense, though you could kind of question why would Laura leave with James if she knows he killed him, you know? So it's a little, but I do like that ending. You also have the dog ending, which that was very fun. It was nice the game had something like that to kind of lighten the mood because it's a pretty dark game. I really liked the dog ending. It was really cool. You go into the room and it basically shows you, hey, the dog's been controlling everything the whole time. He's the player, and it makes it all fun, goofy, and comical. And the dog ending was fun. I like dogs, so I really like the dog ending. And there's certain tasks you have to do to get these endings. I'm not going to go through all of them, but for the dog ending, you have to get the dog key from the dog house to get the dog ending, which you use that in the Lakeview Hotel at the end of the game. And then you have to play the game a certain way for certain endings as well. You also have the UFO ending, which that's a pretty cool ending as well. You use this blue gemstone after beating the game and beating Maria's campaign, and James gets kidnapped by the UFO, and you get to meet Harry. And that was pretty fun to see James from Silent Hill 2 meet Harry from Silent Hill 1. That was pretty cool to see. So that was awesome. And I'm trying to remember all the other endings. The most evil ending was definitely the Maria ending because James moves on from his wife and just leaves with Maria, and that's going to be the new woman he's with. And it was kind of dark at the end when she started coughing, and he said, "You better do something about that." And I was like, "Oh no!" So, well, he's going to eventually kill her if she gets too sick. So, that was a pretty dark ending. I think I covered all the endings. I don't think I'm forgetting any. My favorite endings was dog ending and leave ending if I had to pick. And UFO one was fun as well. So I like the variety of endings in this game. Replay value is there, which is nice. And this series, I can tell, does endings the right way because a lot of game series try to do choices and endings and they don't do it well. Like Resident Evil 7, they tried to have a different ending and it didn't really work when Resident Evil 7 tried to do it because Resident Evil 7 tried to have a choice and a different ending, and it didn't really affect the game that much. It was kind of lazy. They just did it just to have it. Whereas I feel like Silent Hill 2, I feel like they had different endings in a way that made it to where, they were meaningful. They had something behind them, I feel like. Now, let's talk about the characters next, which that coincides with the story. The main character you play as in Silent Hill 2, James Sunderland, I thought he was a pretty cool character. I like his character design. I think he's a very interesting character. The whole concept of his wife dying and what you find out what he did to his wife. I think the side of him being irritable at times and snapping at people is interesting. And I like his interaction with a lot of the characters in the story. I think they're very interesting. He has a good voice actor. I'll talk about the new voices soon. I talk about the characters, which I'll get to, but I do like his voice actor. I thought it was funny when he said to Eddie at the bowling alley, there's this town is full of monsters, and all you can do is sit there and eat pizza. Like the way he delivered it was funny. I liked that, and I thought it was, really good. I think James Sunderland was a good character. You also have Laura, which she was annoying. She was definitely my least favorite character in the game. She was an unlikable little brat. I mean, I know that James is not necessarily 100% good guy for what he did, but she's a brat. She needed to be disciplined or smacked. She needed some discipline. She was a fucking little bitch in this game, a fucking brat. So I didn't care much for Laura, trapping you in the one room, because James was a certain way to her and you got to fight those monsters you know, just she wasn't really nice to a lot of people. So she was unlikable, but she knows Mary and had history with her. Eddie was a pretty interesting character. At first, I thought he was just a guy that was just in Silent Hill, and he had a pretty cool character design. I like his voice actor. Then you find out he ends up killing people because he got tired of being walked all over. And he has some interesting interactions with James. There's a pretty good boss fight with Eddie, which I like. Two different boss fights you have with him. And then you also have Angela. She's a pretty cool character. I would say she might be my favorite side character in the game because you feel bad for her because it's like she went through abuse from her dad, and I feel like she, out of everyone, would deserve the most happy ending, maybe besides Laura, because she went through hell. So I liked her character. I liked her voice actor. I liked her design. I liked her interaction with the main character. Um, And then you also have Maria, which I don't mind Maria. She's a cool character as well. Her chemistry with James is pretty cool. The boss fight with her is pretty cool. The ending with her is pretty cool as well. And her design is pretty good as well. And yeah, she was a good character, had a good voice actress. I also enjoyed her campaign. I thought her campaign was really good and had fun gameplay and a good mixture of melee combat and gun combat. I liked the meat cleaver and the kind of six-shooter weapon you use with her. The revolver, it's pretty nice. Ernest was an interesting character. I think he was pretty much a ghost. Had lost his daughter and then he was dead or something. He seemed like a ghost to me that Maria was interacting with. You play her campaign to see what she was doing before she met James. I did like her campaign. I think it's called Born from a Wish or something like that. That's a pretty good campaign. So she was a good character. And then you have Pyramid Head as well, who was like the boss you fight in the game. He's got a really cool design. He's a manifestation of James Sunderland's guilt, as well as I've heard the sexual stuff where James couldn't have sex with his wife because she was dealing with disease and stuff. And there's certain things in the game you see of like Pyramid Head trying to have sex with certain creatures and he can't. It's kind of to represent how James couldn't do that and had like sexual frustration with his wife that was dying and stuff. So Pyramid Head's a cool enemy, definitely an iconic enemy, and one of those enemies in horror games like the Keeper with the box head from The Evil Within or Nemesis from Resident Evil, that kind of stuff. I think it would be interesting if they made a video game with all those monsters one day. I'd like to see that, like all of them together. I don't know what they would do with them, but characters in the game are really solid, and I like them. Mary seemed like an interesting character, though you don't see her as much as everyone else, but she seemed like an interesting character as well. So the characters are pretty solid. I liked Ernest and Maria's campaign. I thought he had a pretty good voice actor. I'm talking about the voice acting. I actually think the voice acting in this game in Silent Hill 2 was really good. I like the voice acting. Some people said it's bad, but I like it. I think it fits the game, and for the time, I feel like a lot of times when they make something or create something in entertainment, I feel like a lot of times the original version and what they go for initially works the best because that's what their original vision was. I thought the voice acting was really good. I liked it. I think it fit really well. Now, as for the new voice actors, I did like a lot of the new voice actors. I played through the game at least once, trying the new voices. The only voice actor that was way off, though, and was not a good choice was the person they got for Eddie, which is the guy that voices. He does some voices in Fallout New Vegas. He voices War and Darksiders. I didn't think he was a good fit for Eddie. He just felt so out of place. But everybody else I thought was really cool. Troy Baker voices James Sunderland. So I thought the new voice actors are cool, but the Eddie's voice was miscast. Like that wasn't good compared to the original. So yeah, that's what I gotta say about the voice acting. The music in the game is really good. This game has the best soundtrack in the Silent Hill series easily. This game has great songs. Akira did a great job composing the music in Silent Hill 2. It's great music. The music that plays in a lot of the areas and parts of the story is amazing. It's kind of interesting. I played this game more than once, hearing the music a lot because I recognize a lot of the music from Silent Hill 2 from my days of being in the creepypastas. When I used to be in the creepypastas a lot and listening to those stories, they would use a lot of Silent Hill 2 music for narrating creepypastas. So I think the music in the game is really good. I enjoy it a lot. The music in Maria's campaign, the main campaign is great. Music is phenomenal in Silent Hill 2, and it's definitely the best soundtrack in the series. Some of the music that I do like in Silent Hill 2 that I'll talk about. The song that plays when you go into Heaven's Night, that's a really good song. Definitely a standout in Silent Hill 2. I think the song that plays at the bowling alley is also a really good song. That's great as well. I like that too. Some of the music you hear in the beginning of the game, especially when you go through the cemetery where you first meet Angela, the music there is awesome. The music that plays before you go into the Silent Hill town is very ominous and creepy. Just in general, the game has really good music and lots of moments of great music. But those are just some that I wanted to mention that were like real standouts and like some of the favorite ones that I really liked. Level design and stage area wise and atmosphere wise of Silent Hill 2, I like the atmosphere of Silent Hill 2. I think the atmosphere for Silent Hill 2 is really good. There's a lot of good areas. You have the Silent Hill town itself, which I really like. You have some areas you can explore in the Silent Hill town. But there's not a whole lot, just like one time it's an RV. And then I think in another area it's like a little the outside of Burger Place. And then you have the apartment area, which I like the apartment area. That's pretty cool. I like the hospital. That's a pretty cool area, and the nurses enemies you face are really cool. I like the otherworld version of places like the hospital, and I also like the The Labyrinth area, the Lakeview Hotel area might be one of my favorite areas, or maybe my favorite area in the game. That's a cool area. And yeah, I think the game has really good atmosphere. I like the use of the fog, gives the series its own identity, and I like the fog concept they have with, blocking a lot of stuff in the world. And the game, like the Silent Hill town, is basically like it's different for everyone. Basically, like the way James sees the town is based on him and the stuff he goes through, but that's not going to be the same for all the other characters. Like, for instance, you find out that Angela, the way she sees the town and sees her world is it's always in flames, always on fire. You find that out near the end of the story. And so that basically tells you that each character they deal with a different version of the Silent Hill town. So that's another interesting thing as well. But the atmosphere in Silent Hill 2 is really solid. The unlocks and rewards in the game are pretty cool as well. You have like you have difficulty, easy, normal, hard, and you play on certain difficulties. You can unlock new game plus things like chainsaw and hyper spray, which is pretty cool. There's achievements you can get in the game, and you also have bullet adjust, which is nice, where you can increase how much bullets you can carry. You get like two of them unlocked when you play the game more than once and get different endings. Those are pretty nice. You have a star ranking system, which I did the 10-star ranking system of Silent Hill 2. That was difficult. Definitely a very hard thing to do, very challenging, but it was satisfying to do it. One of the things that is aggravating with this game, especially when you go for a 10-star ranking, is the boat shit. Like, you have to really get the boat stuff down. After a few tries, I was able to get it down, but it's still pretty tough, especially the first time. The first few times doing the boat section, I had some trouble with that. Now, for the creatures and enemies of Silent Hill 2, I think the creatures and enemies are really cool. You have the straitjacket enemies you fight a lot, which they look like straitjackets because they have their arms crossed in a straitjacket. Those are pretty cool enemies to face. If you shoot them down, it'll kick them right away. They can crawl around on the ground and bite you. You got the bug enemies you fight, which are called creepers. You have the mannequin enemies you face, which are pretty cool. You have the nurse enemies as well, which are pretty iconic and cool enemies. Definitely some of my favorite enemies in the Silent Hill series and favorite enemies to fight in Silent Hill 2. You have the Pyramid Head enemy, which is a pretty cool enemy. Boss fight with him is nice. You have some of these enemies you face here and there, but they're a lot they show up more in Silent Hill 3 and in Silent Hill Homecoming a lot more. It's like these things you face that crawl under these grates and can attack you through them, and you have to shoot them off the grates. Those are pretty cool enemies as well. You also have something called Abstract Daddy, which is like a boss fight that is basically the dad that abused Angela, and you fight him. He also becomes like a mini enemy you fight a few times in the game. That's a pretty cool enemy. So the creatures and enemies in Silent Hill 2, I think are pretty cool. When it comes to criticisms for Silent Hill 2, there's not really any I can think of. But what I will say is that in terms of the HD collection for Silent Hill 2, there are some issues like sometimes there's game crashes that happen. Not super common, but sometimes they can happen, which is annoying. Sometimes enemies can attack you as soon as you go through a door because the game takes some time to show you what's happening with the loading screens. I thought that was really stupid. The the grainy noise filter is on by default when you first play the game. You can't turn it off until you beat the game, which is really dumb. I just wish you could turn it off in Homecoming, but fortunately you can't. So after beating the game, you can eventually turn it off, which is nice. And the last two things I'll talk about with Silent Hill 2 is that I think the inventory screen is pretty cool. I like the way the inventory looks. It's pretty nice. I also think the game has really nice sound effects. I like the sound effects in the game and the way they sound. The sound effect that the sound effects it makes you pick up items is pretty cool. I also think the visuals for Silent Hill 2 is pretty good. I like the visual style of Silent Hill 2, the way it looks, the graphic style. It fits the game. It fits the horror aesthetic. I think the art style is really cool. And the game does clean up pretty well in the HD collection too. So yeah, the visuals are pretty solid as well. Character models I think look pretty good too and stuff like that. So I like the visuals for Silent Hill 2. Trying to think about if there's anything else I'm missing when it comes to Silent Hill 2 to talk about. I think um now one more thing I'll say is the HD collection for Silent Hill 2. I still haven't played the PS2 version, so I can't really do a lot of comparisons, though I have seen some footage of PS2 Silent Hill 2. And one of the big things I noticed is that there's more sounds in the game compared to the remaster. I mean, if you want to at least experience Silent Hill 2 and 3, which I will eventually review that, I just started playing that now again because I'm going to complete that and then review it eventually. If you want to experience a Silent Hill game, especially Silent Hill 2 and 3, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on it, then the collection's worth getting. It has its problems, but it's still playable. But if you do have a PC and it can emulate, then just play 2 and 3 that way. But overall, I thought Silent Hill 2, this game right here, I thought it was a really good game, really good survival horror game. It had a good story, it had good atmosphere, good gameplay, great characters, and it was a really good survival horror game. And I thought it had really good music and really good atmosphere, good puzzles, and it was a solid game overall. It's definitely my favorite Silent Hill in the series because I feel like it has the best atmosphere, the most interesting characters, the best soundtrack. They really hit a home run with that one. And I do look forward to eventually trying the remake of Silent Hill 2 whenever I eventually can get a PS5. It's just, I'm not the richest person in the world, and PS5s are still pretty expensive to get, but I would like to try the Silent Hill 2 remake one day. But that's my overall opinion and review of Silent Hill 2, the original. That's all I got to say in this review. Peace out, and let me know what you thought of Silent Hill 2 in the comments below.